Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
A massive military parade in Red Square, with Vladimir Putin rallying his troops and the country behind a war in Ukraine. Hurrah! The parade commemorates the anniversary of the Soviet victory over the Nazis, but Putin using a war of necessity to justify a war of choice, accusing America, NATO and Kyiv of provoking the war. He had a message to his troops and militias in Ukraine, saying, "You're fighting for the motherland, for its future, so no one forgets the lessons of the Second World War, so there's no place for Nazis in the world." But with so many troops tied up in Ukraine, this was a smaller parade, and the traditional fly past of fighter jets was cancelled, apparently due to bad weather. Putin claims Victory Day is close at hand, but that's not how it feels here in the northeast. Less than 20 miles from the Russian border, and Putin's troops are in retreat.
I mean, it's pretty shocking. You can see the level of destruction wrought to innocent people, to civilian homes, to a sleepy countryside village. That is what's left of the Russian military here. So when Vladimir Putin declares victory, that's what his victory looks like.
Woohoo, everybody, woohoo. Yeah, he had his May 9th Victory Day speech, and all he did was talk about Nazis and that America, this is a new one. This is a new one now. America was about to invade Russia. America was about to invade. Wow. That's news. That's news to he had 200,000 troops amassed on Ukraine's border, right? Denying that he was going in, denying it for, a month as he amassed all these troops on the border there. And now he says this was not a war of aggression. He didn't choose this. This chose him because the United States was about to invade. What the? I mean, delusional. I don't know, I don't know what's going on with him. I honestly, good-looking people, though, huh? Do you see a bunch of old, wrinkly men. Now, he's all Botoxed and lifted and plumped and full of fillers. You know that. Because Vladimir Putin, when I tell people he's 70 years old, they go, he's 70? Yeah, he's all plumped and, tweaked and, lifted and Botoxed and all of it. He has all of it going on there in his freaking face. But the rumor is that he's sick. The rumor is that he has stomach cancer, which is horrible. That's what my dad died of. And it's a horrible, horrible way to go. But this is apparently the rumor. And so he's in... I guess the I will die trying stage of his life with regard to building back the empire. The empire, which would include NATO states. It would include the Baltics. It would include Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia. It would include Poland. You realize that the Germans, they had an enormous empire in mind, too. You don't see them screaming and yelling about how we got to build it back and build it back better. Or, you don't see that because, if licking your wounds was a thing to do after you totally destroyed your chance at empire, we would all be speaking Latin. You understand that? We would all be somehow, observing, Emperor Day and Caesar. And I don't know. It's very sick and it's very sad and it's very dangerous and it's very ugly because over the weekend, what happened here was the man who is now claiming he's the victim of all this, very Trumpian, or is Trump Putinish? I don't know. But so Vlad is now the victim here. He's the victim. Russia is the victim of Ukraine's aggression, which is it's such a humongous big lie that there are no words for how big the lie is. But it's so twisted. It's a 180 from what's really happening, and we know that because he literally bombed this weekend another school. He bombed another school, a school. How is a school a military target? It isn't. You understand, right? No, and there were apparently 90 people sheltering in the basement of this school for over a month. For over a month, living in total darkness in an apocalyptic environment because he literally invaded them for doing absolutely nothing but existing. He wants to erase them. This is a war of erasure. He needs to stomp out and remove and have a final solution for Ukrainians. And this is it. So he literally bombed a school over the weekend where 90 people were sheltering. 60 of them are believed dead and lying beneath the rubble. But he's the victim. You get this? You get this? This is a recurring theme in ultra uber right, fascist circles, that they're always the victim, that it's always, never their fault, that they had to do the murder, they had to do the stealing, they had to do the oligarchy, they had to do the fascism, they had no choice, and they're firing cruise missiles at, Odessa, which this is a port city. This is a city that, is essential for the access to the Black Sea, right? But no other reason. There's no military in Odessa. There's just nothing. And a steel mill, this was the good news over the weekend. Everybody was watching that steel mill. I mean, it was just, when the movie is made, and it will be made, I guarantee you there'll be all different ones, but the one that I will watch, the one that everybody will watch, will be the most apocalyptic one about Mariupol. It will be the most apocalyptic one about living in the steel plant, the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. I mean, this has got to be, because there were tunnels underneath the steel plant, which is why they went there to shelter. This is what, now all of the civilians, all of them are out. So the movie has a happy ending now. But I mean, make like, what is that one about the train? Snowpiercer? It'll make that look stupid. It's going to make that one look really, really, really dumb.
Be careful. Snowpiercer has a very rabid fan base.
I know.
Good show, good movie.
I watched it. I watched Snowpiercer. I watched it because, the kids said, gotta watch Snowpiercer. It's awesome. So, 2 hours I'll never get back, but watched it. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's the apocalypse is taking place on a train. Yeah, on a train, the whole time on a train. According to the class system. So the poor people are like in the, really crappy part of the train. And the rich person who funked this up, he's in the front part of the train with, like every convenience known to man. Yeah. But this one, this Azovstal will be the most amazing apocalyptic movie. Anyway, the happy ending is thus. They all got out. All the civilians have been evacuated. Apparently, there were about 550, more or less, people that were sheltered in that steel plant for the whole 10 weeks. They've been there the whole time. Now, what's left there are the military men. What's left there is the dreaded Azov battalion, the one that, everybody says, well, they're Nazis. They're Nazis. So apparently they deserve to die is what's going on there. And so those military men said that they refuse to surrender. They will never surrender. And they've been recording videos. I won't show them to you because they're really, really crazy and heartbreaking and sad and the most courageous displays I've ever seen, where they're telling you out loud, they're saying to you, and by you I mean anybody that will watch them on Telegram or social media outlets that will post it, because a lot of social media won't post it, but they're saying, listen, we all know we're going to die, we know we're doomed, we know we're here, we know that what they're asking for is an extraction mission. They're asking like Turkey to come and get them and extract them to Turkey or some country, some, sort of kind of neutral. Oh, Turkey's NATO, but, they're saying, come get us out of here because we will never surrender. We will die in this steel plant. We will die there. But that's the good news. The other good news is, that Snake Island, remember that was the beginning of seeing the Ukrainian fortitude. Remember Snake Island, where they said, hey, the Russian warship said, come out wherever you are, we're going to bomb you. And they said, go F yourself.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
In a surprise and highly secretive move, the First Lady crossed into Ukraine on Mother's Day to meet with her counterpart, Elena Zelenska.
I thought it was important to show the Ukrainian people that this war has to stop. And this war has been brutal.
Russia's attacks in the country unrelenting. More than 60 people feared dead after a Russian bomb destroyed a school in the east. Government officials releasing these images showing smoke rising from what had been a place of sanctuary for up to 90 people. The governor of the region saying the chances of people still being alive are small. In the coastal city of Mariupol, 170 more civilians flee. Children and the elderly leaving the city by night, arriving to Ukrainian-held territory exhausted. This man saying, every day we had doubts that we wouldn't be brought out and that we're going to be left behind there forever. At the besieged Azovstal steel plant, bombs continue to pummel Ukrainian positions as the Russians push to take full control of the city. The far-right Azov regiment holding a virtual news conference, refusing to surrender.
We are basically here a dead man, yeah. Most of us know this, yes, and why we fight so fearlessly.
Well, given what Putin said, I think it's now reasonable to expect a long, slow, grinding campaign ahead with no clear end or victory in sight.
Oh, this is apocalyptic, really, what they're going through there in that steel plant. Bombing schools. Well, you know, this is how it started. This is how the whole intensely, sick war of aggression against Ukraine started. It started with Vladimir Putin literally bombing a kindergarten. Remember that? Natalia Butenko, that's whose school it was. She was the teacher there, and that was the first target. The idea that, civilians are collateral damage, oh, no. Civilians are targets. Civilians are targeted. This is the most amazing war crime that's been playing out in front of the entire world's face for 10 weeks now, for 10 stinking weeks. And yesterday, it was actually yesterday. I know today is May 9th, but, it happened last night here, right? Russia is ahead. So Putin gave his speech last night for today, right? And he started screaming about Nazis, and they're all Nazis, and World War III is imminent. I mean, the Russian TV has been screaming about World War III. Just so you know, their entire state-run media is like Fox News. The whole thing, every day, all day, all night, all day, all night, is just a bunch of propagandists on the TV with a set that looks kind of modern and 21st century, talking about 20th century things, talking about World War III, talking about Nazism, talking about fascism, talking about the United States is responsible for what Russia is doing in Ukraine. I mean, it's so bizarre. It's so backwards. They're here. I'm going to play you, what they talk about on the Russian TV here.
Нам объявили войну, чего нам ждать далее? Нам сначала придется провести спецоперацию по демилитаризации Североатлантического альянса. Это, как кажется, совсем будет непросто.
Вот эти 40 представителей разных стран, это такой сегодня коллективный Гитлер. Вы абсолютно были правы, когда сказали, что де-факто, по сути, мы находимся в состоянии Третьей мировой войны.
Россия принципиальным образом несет три вещи мировому порядку. Первое – это справедливость, второе – это мир, и третье – это безопасность. А вот эти все коллеги пытаются развязать большую войну. Они ее уже фактически развязали.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it there, okay? That is the Russian talking heads. This is the propaganda channel. These are channels in Russia telling the Russian people that NATO started this war, the United States is behind it, and that they are a collective Hitler. The 40 NATO states, there's 30, but the 40 NATO states, according to them, are the collective Hitler, right? And that World War III has already started. Okay. And, that now if they don't succeed in Ukraine, there's going to be some sort of we can't afford to lose in Ukraine. We're going to have to go nuclear. This is what they say. Listen.
Или мы проигрываем на
Either we lose in Ukraine,
или начинается Третья мировая.
Or the Third World War
Лично
starts.
Я считаю наиболее реалистичным путь Третьей мировой. Потому что, зная нас,
зная нашего руководителя Путина Владимира Владимировича, вот самое невероятное, что в конце концов все это закончится ядерным ударом, мне представляется все же более вероятным, чем вот такое развитие событий. К ужасу моему, с одной стороны, с другой стороны, к пониманию, что, ну что, значит так. Знаешь, меня...
Но мы-то в рай.
Да. Меня...
А они просто сдохнут.
Okay, so basically, Missy over there is saying, you know, hey, listen, we can't lose in Ukraine, and so we may have to go nuclear. And, you know, while it's to my horror to tell you people this, at least we will all go to heaven. This is her conclusion, okay? And this is what they're repeating over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It's like Tucker Carlson on an endless loop with the live assist from Sean Hannity advocating for nuclear holocaust, advocating for mutually assured destruction, saying, hey, listen, you know, too bad. I'm sorry to tell you, but this is going to end knowing our guy. This is what she said. She said, knowing our leader, Vladimir, and she says his middle name, knowing our leader, Vladimir Putin, this is going to end with nuclear war. And, you know, it's a horror, but at least we will go to heaven. And, you know, it's inevitable, so pretty much wrap your brain around that. Wrap your brain around that. That is what they say on the Russian TV all day, every day. And this is all to brainwash. This is all to propagandize ordinary Russians into giving up their sons to this meat grinder that is the war of aggression that Putin chose, that Putin organized, that Putin is losing because he's got a third-rate military, because his military literally was full of thieves who stole the military budget, pocketed it, and that military of his is a tin pot, third-rate military. So the good news is the people that you know, the warship, the Moskva, right? That thing has sunk, as you know, right? And then there was a military contingent that took over Snake Island. Remember, they captured the soldiers on Snake Island, the ones who said, hey, Russian warship, we got a message for you, go F yourself. You know, they turned that into a postage stamp in Ukraine. You gotta love their sense of humor throughout all this. It is amazing, their sarcasm, their wit. So incredible. Anyway, the Ukrainian military flattened the Russian positions in the Black Sea that was, you know, sitting on Snake Island. They had captured all those guys. Those guys were exchanged in a prisoner exchange. So the guys who told the Russian warship, which is now at the bottom of the Black Sea, to go F itself, they're free. They're free. And I watched a video of a helicopter try to defend that island, and it got blown up. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And Ukraine is taking back a lot of the territory that Russia took. This weekend, it took control of 5 villages, took it back from Russian occupation, and part of a 6th also. Pretty good.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Yeah, so while Putin over there is declaring some sort of a freaking victory day, which is just, I mean, I guess this is his way of saying, I'm insane. I'm not insane, but I'm no kind of sane that you would recognize. I mean, what do you make of a speech where he is accusing, you know, Ukrainians of being Nazis and saying that they are planning on building nuclear weapons? They surrendered their nuclear weapons, and they surrendered their nuclear weapons so that they would never be invaded, and that did not work out for them. And he had zero evidence for anything he said at all, and canceled the flyover, saying weather. And if you saw that video I just played of the report that was done by various news outlets, it was a clear and sunny day over Moscow. What weather was he I swear to God, he has like nothing but painted tin cans that look like, you know, modern, you know, elite weapons. And it's really, you know, just props. It's very sick. But the big lie has been the tactic that is preferred by despots all over the world. It was perfected by Hitler, as you know. And, you know, Trump and Putin are now peddling the big outrageous lie. Here in the United States, they're peddling multiple big outrageous lies. One of them being that Trump won the election except math, And the other one is that, and this is really interesting to me, you know that right-wing evangelicals believe that they were always against abortion, but I have shown you that that just simply isn't true. That is not the history of the United States, nor is it the modern history of the United States, nor is it the history of the Southern Baptist Convention or the history of the evangelical. Billy Graham was pro-life, was pro-choice. Yes, that Billy Graham. Billy Graham was pro-choice. The Southern Baptist Convention, which is the most conservative version of evangelical Christianity, Criswell, he was the head of the Southern Baptist Convention in 1973 when Roe v. Wade, and just so you know who the characters are, Roe is a woman named Norma McCrory, okay? Norma McCrory, by the way, never had an abortion, you understand? Norma McCrory had been pregnant two times before she became the plaintiff, and they made her into a Jane Roe, right? So she had two pregnancies prior to the one that they litigated on because they needed somebody who was pregnant so that they could have standing to bring this to court, right? Now, she had two previous pregnancies. Both of those children she had put up for adoption. Apparently, she did not feel that she was, mother material. And so she didn't want to go through the process of putting up yet a third child for adoption. So she became the plaintiff. Now, who is Wade? Okay, so Wade is Henry Wade. Who the hell is Henry Wade? He was the district attorney for Dallas County. Okay, so when all of that happened, it was first litigated in courts, right, in Texas. So interesting. And the Texas court sided with Miss McCrory, but of course, Mr. Wade stuck his face into it and appealed it, and this is how it ended up at the Supreme Court 2.5 years later. Well, pregnancies don't last 2.5 years, right? And so Ms. McCrory actually gave birth. She never had an abortion. Just find this so fascinating. However, at the time, the Southern Baptist Convention, the president of it in Dallas was a guy named Criswell. And Criswell was pro-choice, as was the Right Reverend Billy Graham. Oh, yeah. Again, let me explain this to you. This did not actually even appear as a issue of the right. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. You understand that, right? Okay. And so when Ronald Reagan was governor of California, guess what California did? They made abortion legal in that state. New York, too, under Rockefeller, who was also a Republican. The Roe v. Wade decision was 7-2 with 5 Republican justices agreeing that pro-choice was what the Constitution intended under privacy, that pro-choice was the only place to land on a question of whether a woman has autonomy over her own person. And the Christian evangelical community was fine with it. They had no problem with it for many, many years. That's why there were no protests after Roe v. Wade. That's why there was no outrage or marches or, churches screaming about murder. No, there was none of that. This is a very Catholic thing. This is a dominionist thing. This is a Reconstructionist thing that lives and breathes inside Catholic Reconstructionists, Bill Barr dominionists. This is a very, very narrow lane that they're putting all Americans into. This isn't religious freedom. This is religious privilege. And it's religious privilege that's being advanced in spite of evangelical Christians and their belief, in spite of Jews and their belief, in spite of every other person in this country and their belief or lack of belief. This is lunatic, fringy, right-wing Catholicism. Amy Coney Barrett, Alito, Bill Barr. This is a very, very narrow group of people. Now, when Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, although he was pro-choice his entire career, just like Trump was pro-choice his entire life, all of a sudden it became a political issue because private religious schools had lost their tax exemption because they chose to continue to keep segregated their schools. And the court ruled that if you're going to segregate in your school at this late date in 1979 and 1980, if you were going to do that, then you couldn't be tax exempt because you're violating federal law regarding integrated schools. And that's what gave them the idea that they could sue. Now, people weren't all in on, a pro-segregationist approach to religion. They had learned their lesson. And so the evangelical Christian faction of this country decided they couldn't sell to evangelical Christians a desire to keep schools segregated. And so they said, we need to pick a different fight. And so they decided to pick a fight against women. They decided to pick the Catholic fight, even though they're not Catholic. And so they started this whole thing about abortion. It was made up out of whole cloth, and it was foisted on people all across this country who go to church. It wasn't their issue. They didn't believe in it. It just turned out to be a great performer for them.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
It's ironic and tragic that on this Mother's Day, we are talking about compulsory motherhood. And it's not just compulsory motherhood, it's compulsory conception, because they are seriously talking about banning the IUD, banning all forms of contraception, because they believe, and this is a determined minority with a long game plan, they believe that the fertilized ovum, even before it's implanted in the uterine wall, is a human being. Well, they're entitled to that belief, but they're really not entitled in a society like ours to impose that belief on everybody. And I think it's an important women's issue, but it's an important men's issue as well, because freedom is indivisible. This all makes me think of The Handmaid's Tale, and the idea, and Mitch McConnell, as you showed, is floating it. The idea of a nationwide ban on abortion is abhorrent, but it's not impossible. We really have to get going and fighting against this. And the only way to fight against it is at the polls, to elect people who are committed to freedom and to personal choice and to privacy and to equality. And in the meantime, I think more people should take seriously the idea of expanding the court by 4 seats, because it's been packed by 3 justices put there in dubious ways by the former president, all committed, despite their pretense at open-mindedness, all committed to overturning Roe v. Wade and Casey. It's a national crisis, and it has to be dealt with as such.
Okay, so that is the constitutional scholar Lawrence Tribe telling you that it's time to expand the Supreme Court since they packed it illegitimately. And they did pack it illegitimately. This all started with Mitch McConnell holding open a seat after Scalia died, Antonin died, and Obama happened to be the president of the United States when Antonin Scalia kicked the bucket. And he had picked one of the most moderate dudes. We know now how moderate Merrick Garland really is. I mean, we almost want to light a fire under Merrick Garland's behind and tell him, come on, let's indict the former president already. I mean, the guy has, incited violence. He was responsible for a violent insurrection that targeted the Speaker of the House, that targeted his own vice president to be hanged, complete with a hangman's gallows. Being brought on the grounds of the Capitol Hill. Okay, I mean, it's an amazing thing, right? It's totally amazing. But he's saying, look, these people who presented themselves for confirmation, from Gorsuch to Kavanaugh to little Handmaid's Tale, handmaiden Amy Coney Barrett, and she actually is part of a seriously tiny group of Catholics, a Roman Catholic, let's say, anti-contraceptive, far-right portion of the Roman Catholic belief system, right? She is the mother of 7. And she actually is a member of the Women of Praise, which literally assigns a handmaiden to a woman so that that woman can confess her sins to another woman. That is the group Women of that is the Women of Praise group that Amy. Now, they all sat there and they lied during their confirmation. Each and every one of them perjured themselves. Each and every one of them at least was not transparent or honest about their intentions as a Supreme Court justice. They were all asked, as everyone is asked, about Roe v. Wade being the law of the land, and they all professed that it is precedent on precedent. Now, Amy said, because, otherwise she would have to go and confess to her handmaid, I guess. She said, look, the fact that people still debate it, oh my God, is evidence that it's not settled in this country. Well, there's a lot of crap in this country that's not settled, like racism isn't a settled issue in this country. There's a lot of unsettled issues in this country. Doesn't mean that you get to rip away people's right to fall in love with who they fall in love with. We have gay marriage that is still debated in this country. Doesn't mean that gay marriage, which is decided by the Supreme Court as a equality issue, that if marriage is available to this group, then marriage has to be available to everyone. But she, so she lied and sort of signaled. And yet, Susan Collins voted for her. And yet she was confirmed. I mean, it's very sick and twisted. But this all started with Mitch McConnell holding open a seat on the Supreme Court because he didn't want Obama to have Merrick Garland have a confirmation hearing. He didn't even want to see Merrick Garland or have us see Merrick Garland, because we would understand that Merrick Garland was extremely moderate and extremely, middle of the road and extremely amenable to precedent. They wanted, these people who were great fundraisers for them. And by them, I mean the Federalist Society, I mean the Leo Leonards, I mean the Carrie Severinos. This is what Trump promised. Now, you sit there and you say, well, why did the evangelical Christians, who, by the way, really, if you dive into your own history, if you are an evangelical Christian, just go ahead and look up what Billy Graham's position on choice was. Just go ahead and look up what the Southern Baptist Convention's position on abortion was when abortion was decided. And you'll find out that that is not something that is historically grounded in evangelical Christianity. It isn't. This is a right-wing version of Catholicism, of Roman Catholicism. This is not your belief system. You don't have an issue with when life begins, because the Bible tells you that life begins, and this is what the evangelical Christian community has always held, that Genesis 2:7 was the meaning of when a person has a soul, when a person begins human life. And that is when God blows his breath into your nose. And that is what everyone in that church everyone in that denomination, that's what the Christian right believed until the Republican Party needed something to hang their hat on. They needed some way to campaign. They needed some way to divide white people. And they understood that segregation wasn't going to do it for them anymore. So they gave segregation a rest, and they moved on to segregating white people by virtue of gender. White men against white women. And they started this. They started screaming about feminism and women were the enemy and family values and blah, 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 and this and that women, had too much control. And this prior to the 80s, prior to Ronald Reagan, who was pro-choice, they had no issue with it. They had none. Billy Graham, in Rochester, Minnesota, at the Mayo Clinic, where he was actually undergoing tests for cancer treatment, he was approached by the pro-life, whatever, they weren't called that yet, group. And he said he didn't want to help them out. He said, this isn't something I want to speak out on. I think it would harm my ability to preach the love of Jesus. This isn't our issue. It's a Catholic thing. That was Billy Graham's position. And he didn't want to associate evangelicals with it because he wanted to preach the love of Jesus. And he believed that Jesus loved men and women equally. And he wasn't going to, start doing it. And then you had Criswell, W.A. Criswell. He was the two-term president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He was senior pastor of the First Baptist Church of Dallas. Okay? He was there for 50 years. And he wouldn't let the pro-life movement use his church as a venue to even talk about anti-abortion issues. He said it wasn't his issue either. He said that he didn't believe the soul was present, quote, until a baby draws first breath. He said, he cited the passage in Genesis I'm talking to you about 2:7. He said, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And at that moment, man became a living soul. That's how they thought about it. But all of a sudden, they needed to do something different in the Republican Party because segregation wasn't a good issue for them. And they started talking about this, women thing and feminazis and this, women are destroying the family with all this freedom they have.
Mary had a little man. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Partial birth abortion, the eliminating of abortion in the third trimester, a big issue in Washington. Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice. I hate the concept of abortion. I hate it. I hate everything it stands for. I cringe when I listen to people debating the subject. But I just believe in choice. And again, it may be a little bit of a New York background because there is some different attitude in different parts of the country. And, I was raised in New York and grew up and work and everything else in New York City. But I am strongly for choice, and yet I hate the concept of abortion.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I would, I am pro-choice in every respect and as far as it goes, but I just hate it.
Yeah, no one likes it, especially not people that actually have to face the actual procedure. Nobody likes it. But you see, this is the thing. All that happened here was it became a great performer. It became a great fundraiser. It became a great dividing and conquering. Let's divide the white people in this country by gender instead of race, being the issue, because it's not playing anymore. We're not getting voters out, based on segregation anymore. So let's choose a different battle. And the entire argument that they made about pro-life, it was on the assumption that evangelicals have always been pro-life, and that is a demonstrably provable lie. It's just not true. It's not true in any respect. This is strictly a Catholic issue, and now it's a far-right Catholic issue. It's an Amy Coney Barrett. It's a dominionist right-wing version of Catholicism. It's an issue that is seriously not embraced by majorities of Americans. It's not in dispute by majorities of Americans. In fact, the latest polling still has approval of leaving it alone at 69%. Just leave it alone. Leave it the way it is. 69% of America agrees that should be the case. So I started reading about when this really happened. When did this all change, and when did guys like Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves get to say what Californians or what New Yorkers or what people all over this country in a massive majority believe is the right thing to do? When did Mississippi become the influencer? When did it become the arbiter of what all women in this country should be facing? It turns out that if you read deeply about this, you will end up reading, the people who started it and how apologetic they are now for what they did, for the kind of hatred and division and the murderous behavior of their flock. I mean, Tiller, the baby killer, and doctors have been killed in their own homes. Doctors have been killed in their own church. Doctors have been targeted for death and killed by extreme lunatics who believe that this is something that evangelicals, are supposed to be defending. And it's just not true. It's just not true. If you read something called The Real Origins of the Religious Right, which is, was written by a Dartmouth religion professor. And if you read, some of the people who are part of this movement who now repent and are sorry for being part of this movement, like Frank Schaeffer. Frank Schaeffer's father was Francis Schaeffer, and Francis Schaeffer was the originator of this tactic, right? Francis Schaeffer was a guy who put his own money into developing a movie. Believe it or not, it was a movie. And the movie had to do with abortion, right? It was a very Handmaid's Tale kind of thing. And it didn't sell. And they lost like $1 million of their own dollars on this movie because nobody would show up. They wouldn't allow it to be shown in evangelical churches because, as I told you, Billy Graham said, that is not my issue. That is a Catholic issue. I believe in the love of Jesus, and it would hurt me to show this movie. It would hurt me to start saying things that you want me to say because, I wouldn't be able to preach the love of Jesus. And the same thing with the Southern Baptist Convention. They said, this is not our issue. Okay, we just don't believe that, that Roe is a problem for us. We don't disagree with it. We think that a baby is a baby, a human being, when the breath of life is, breathed into their nostrils and you hear the baby cry, that is a sign of a soul. They believed that, and they believed it all along. But they made this movie, and they lost their money. And so Francis Schaeffer decided that, and he was Coral Ridge Baptist Church, he decided that he was going to politically show the Republican Party how this could fundraise for them, how they could make a fortune on this issue. And his son wrote this amazing, long book about what their family did to America and how sorry that he is for doing it. And he says things like, I'll read you a little excerpt here. It says, their entire argument hinged on the assumption that evangelicals are and always have been pro-life. That is a lie. As my friend Randall Barmer, the Mandel family professor in the arts and sciences at Dartmouth College, noted in The Real Origins of the Religious Right, quote, the abortion myth quickly collapses under historical scrutiny. In fact, it wasn't until 1979, a full 6 years after Roe, that evangelical leaders seized on abortion. When the Roe decision was handed down, W.A. Criswell was pleased. Now, he was the head of the Southern Baptist Church and had been for 50 years. He said, quote, "I've always felt that it was only after a child was born and had life separate from its mother that it became an individual person, and it has always, therefore, seemed to me that what is best for the mother and for the future should always be allowed." It was only a year or so later that things started to change after my dad got other evangelical leaders to agree to speak out on the abortion issue, including Moral Majority founder Jerry Falwell, Dr. James Dobson, founder of the radio show and the ministry Focus on the Family, and televangelist Pat Robertson. At first, even they balked, but eventually all of these leaders came to see the abortion issue as a means to have access to power. It was a useful way to rile up voters, to get them into a fury of perpetual righteous indignation, and then steer them into the Republican Party. Only after these and other leaders jumped on board the cause did our film start to rent and sell. Then we made up for our early financial losses and then some. So it wasn't until Focus on the these radio shows and televangelists and, you know, crazy people who, you know, literally were preaching for money on the TV started saying, hey, this could work. This could actually work, because the racism that we've been preaching from the pulpit, it's not making the phones ring. It's not getting the checks in the mail. It's not creating, you know, a fortune for us. In fact, you know, we have nothing except the actual love of Jesus. And while that works for Billy Graham, we don't have a niche. We don't have a road. We don't have a separate fundraising avenue. And so we'll do this. And you know what we'll do? We'll approach the Republican Party and we'll show them that this is a great fundraiser for them too. And that's what they did. They showed the film to Congress. They showed it first to Jack Kemp. They showed it to Bob Dole. They showed it to the Republican Club in Washington, D.C. They showed it to Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan was pro-choice. He had legalized abortion in California. Nelson Rockefeller, Republican, pro-choice, legalized abortion in New York before Roe v. Wade. And they all knew that they were, in fact, telling a lie, because conservative Christians, evangelical Americans, never had a problem with when life starts. It wasn't a question. It was settled for them.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What do you make of his claim that Roe v. Wade is not heeding that founding document?
I think it's just intellectually and historically bankrupt. The founding document didn't list all of the rights we have. It doesn't say anything about our rights to marry, our rights to decide how to bring up our children, our freedom to think what we will. It protects liberty in very broad terms. It protects equality. And this idea by Justice Alito, and he is backed by the right wing of the court and by many right-wing activists, this idea that the Constitution protects only those rights that are listed and those rights that are rooted in a misogynist history that really didn't take account of women at all.
Right.
Is simply a prescription for turning the clock back, not just to the 1950s, but to the 1850s. It's a regressive approach, and it's not consistent with our trajectory of constitutional rights, which have expanded and expanded. This will be the first time that the Supreme Court has taken away by a majority vote of people who were put on the court by someone who didn't even win the majority of the American people. The first time that a basic right has been taken away, that people have built their lives around for 50 years, And Justice Alito says, oh, there hasn't been any big reliance on it. Women have got the vote now, and women are all over the place, and they're in the workplace, and they don't need this right.
We don't need it.
It's ridiculous. Women have risen into positions of approximate equality largely because the Supreme Court 50 years ago, or nearly 50 years ago, affirmed for them the right that we men have long had, and that is the right to control our own bodies and our own destinies. To roll that back is really to go back to the dark ages. We really should not let that happen.
Yeah, it is historically bankrupt. It is obviously, intellectually bankrupt, but it is historically bankrupt too. This isn't religious freedom. This is religious privilege, and the privilege goes to a very narrow right-wing version of Roman Catholicism practiced by the likes of Amy Coney Barrett, Samuel Alito, Dominionists. Okay, Bill Barr is a Dominionist. This is a very narrow idea. Okay. And the idea that America, for the first time in our history, which is not very long, okay, it's less than 300 years of our history, but that in the history of the United States, we have never, ever used the law to restrict a right that we worked to get. Okay. The idea that, so now we're in like 13th Amendment territory, right? You understand that if they could take away, if they can use their power on the court to take rights away that have been established rights in this country, then their first desire around making Roe v. Wade, around making choice a religious issue, if you understand the history of it, it goes back to segregation. The idea that segregation wasn't playing well for them, and that all their ire was raised over the ruling that Christian schools couldn't practice segregation and still claim tax exempt status, is the basis for coming up with something new to divide Americans, and that became Roe v. Wade. It became abortion. Because if you look in the 17th and the 18th centuries, abortion was legal under common law, as long as it was before something called quickening, which Alito actually mentions in his decision. He talks about quickening. So when a pregnant woman could feel the fetus move, that used to be called quickening. And that's, roughly around 16 weeks or so. And back in the day, in the 17th and 18th century, it was common. It was common for women to end their pregnancies if, something didn't feel right to them. So this is historically inaccurate, but now you understand why the right wing hates history so much. Now you understand why the right wing doesn't want you near a history book. They don't want you to understand even your recent history. They don't want you to understand what happened in 1979, what happened in 1980, when Roe was decided in 1973. It was actually decided earlier than that in Texas, which is where Roe started, okay? They don't want you to understand that the evangelical Christian church did not have an issue with the question, when does life begin? They had no issue with choice. They had no issue with abortion. They had none. It wasn't their thing. It wasn't in their religion. They didn't believe it. So this is all manufactured. This is all contrived. This is all contrary to our history in this country. And so what's being foisted upon us is a very, very restrictive, narrow, Roman Catholic way of thinking, a dominionist, reconstructionist Catholic version of Catholicism, I should say, that's being foisted upon all of us under the lie that evangelical Christians have always been, against abortion. It's just not true. It isn't sustainable. It's not truthful. It's not accurate. It's not anything that is, part of our history. It just isn't. It just became the war against women when the Republican Party could no longer sell segregation. And it turned out to be a fabulous fundraiser for them. Abortion and saving America from those feminists became a reliable and perpetual fundraiser for evangelical leaders. It made the phones ring. And so by the early 80s, no Republicans wanted to resist that message, even though it had nothing to do with the way that they were raised. It had nothing to do with, their religion. It had nothing to do with the belief system that they had, no matter what their religion was, unless they were ultra-dominionist Roman Catholic. That's it. So when Reagan saw that this was a great wedge issue, right, that this was a good way to divide, separate white people over something called family values, he decided he would go with it. And evangelical leaders seized on it, not for moral reasons, but because it made the phones ring, because it was a fundraiser, because it was lucrative. It was something they could sell. It was a lie, but they could sell it because they couldn't sell segregated schools. They couldn't sell it anymore. And so Reagan faked it. He just faked it. And then you had so much indoctrination, so much propagandizing, so much lying, so much that over personal behavior that was never, ever something that anybody had an issue with except for this one small sect, okay, in this country, that they literally said that they would tolerate a person who had a couple of divorces, an alleged rape or two, a lifetime of molesting women, money laundering for thugs, and lying about just about everything, a racist, a tax cheat, just to advance this.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. I believe the Constitution protects the right to privacy. And I have no reason or agenda to prejudge the issue or to predisposed to rule one way or the other on the issue of abortion.
Roe versus Wade is an important precedent of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has reaffirmed the decision, sometimes on the merits, sometimes in Casey, based on stare decisis. And I think that when a decision is challenged and it is reaffirmed, that strengthens its value.
It is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. It was reaffirmed in Casey in 1992 and in several other cases. So a good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court, worthy as treatment of precedent like any other.
This is an important precedent of the Supreme Court that's been reaffirmed many times, but then and this is the point I want to make that I think is important, Planned Parenthood versus Casey reaffirmed Roe and did so by considering the stare decisis factors. So Casey now becomes a precedent on precedent.
People use super precedent differently.
Okay.
The way that it's used in the scholarship and the way that I was using it in the article that you're reading from was to define cases that are so well settled that no political actors and no people seriously push for their overruling. And I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall in that category. And scholars across the spectrum say that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled. But descriptively, it does mean that it's not a case that everyone has accepted and doesn't call for its overruling.
Oh, my God. She's the only one, okay? She's the only one that suggested that she was willing to overturn Roe v. Wade based on her idea that people still argue about it, therefore it's not settled in law, which is crazy because people still argue about everything. Everything. I don't know one thing people don't argue about. Let's ban money because people argue about money all the time. Let's ban everything that people argue about. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But they lied. They lied, and everyone knows that they lied.
You've said that the 5 Supreme Court justices lied in their confirmation hearings when they said that Roe v. Wade was precedent and settled law. Are you accusing them of committing perjury?
You know, I come at this issue from the perspective of a lawyer who worked in fraud all the time, corporate fraud. If a corporation put these kind of statements in their quarterly filings, they would be seen to be purposefully misleading and would be deemed fraud. so I think all their statements should be looked at very, very carefully. And I think they misled the Senate with the intention of getting their confirmation vote with the intention of overruling Roe. And so I'm very concerned that these justices have crossed a line that no one believed would be crossed. That they would purposefully create the impression that they would not overrule settled precedent, and that it was not only deserving of due weight and the importance of precedent, but because it had been reaffirmed that it deserves more weight, and then go ahead and overturn it, especially with the reasoning that Justice Alito makes in this draft opinion. It's outrageous.
They're liars. They are posers, as we used to say. Okay? These are disingenuous people who pose themselves in a very genuine fashion as being jurists who care a great deal about stare decisis and precedent upon precedent and privacy rights and settled law and all these things, just so that they could build a majority of lunatic, fringy people on that court and restrict rights in this country, rights to privacy. Now, you know, the very next thing to go is going to be contraception. That is the very next thing. And we know that. We know that because Mississippi is the arbiter of all things, you know, private now, right? They're going to say what is and what isn't permitted in our society because Mississippi turned out so well. It turned out to be a great state for health care, for children, for the foster care system, for poverty. It's such a guiding light for the rest of America, isn't it? Don't we all want to be more like Mississippi than, California? Don't we all want to be more like Mississippi than New York? Don't we all want to be more like Mississippi than Illinois? I know every day people wake up and go, how do I get this functioning state to be more like Mississippi? That's going to be my goal. I mean, the governor of Mississippi was on the TV this weekend, and they asked him, like, how in the world do you want the rest of the United States to look more like Mississippi?
So, Governor, you and I have talked about this before, but Mississippi, as you know, has the highest rate of infant mortality in the United States. You have the highest rate of child poverty in the United States. Your state has no guaranteed maternity leave that's paid. The legislature in Mississippi just rejected extending postpartum Medicaid coverage. Great. Your foster care system is also the subject of a long-running federal lawsuit over its failure to protect children from abuse. You and I have had this conversation before. Oh my God. I hear you. You say you want to do more to support mothers and children, but you've been in state government since 2004. You were the state treasurer, then you were the lieutenant governor, now you're the governor. Based on the track record of the state of Mississippi, why should any of these girls or moms believe you?
Well, look, as I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, the reality is that when I got elected governor, my very first speech in my inaugural address, I was very clear that I believe in my heart that I was elected not to try to hide our problems, but to try to fix our problems. We have a long history of poor health outcomes. It's due in large part to poverty, and so we are focusing every day on fixing the challenges that are before us. When you talk about things, when you talk about these young ladies, the best thing we can do for them is to provide and improve educational opportunities for them. And we've worked extremely hard in our state to do that. We've got to continue to work to provide workforce opportunities, jobs for these individuals. But to do that, they've got to improve the quality of their skills, and we as a state are investing heavily in that.
He wants you to work more. Now, how do you work more if you have more children? And there's no paid leave to take care of those children. And there's no child care. There's no health care. Not for you, not for your children. Foster care is a complete and utter shambles. Those kids are abused constantly. This is an ongoing problem in Mississippi, along with infant mortality, along with mothers dying in childbirth. along with poverty, along with, well, you know, I keep on saying that I believe I was elected. You've been in government your entire adult life in Mississippi. I'm telling you, it's just a fundraiser. You understand that? It's just a fundraiser. They don't give a damn about the issue. They don't give a damn about the children. They don't give a damn about the women. They don't give a damn. They just care about power, and this is a constant performer.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show.
It is.
To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I got to say, this week it was shameful that the White House refused to condemn violent protesters threatening the families of the Supreme Court. It is disgraceful. And Joe Biden used to be chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Joe Biden knows it's disgraceful. He's literally threatening the lives of these justices by the mob they're unleashing. It's the same thing we saw with Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots, where the left embraced them, and now they're embracing mob violence to get their partisan outcome.
That's so interesting. Okay, January 6th. Just saying. But you want to see how a talking point works? Okay, so Ted Cruz says that on Maria Bartiromo, who is a Catholic, by the way, yes, and goes to all the diocese dinners, that this is mob violence, that they're threatening the lives of the justices, right, through mob violence. Okay, so here's Fox News moments later.
Now, as he brazenly incites mobs to disrupt the proceedings of the Supreme Court for partisan ends, yes, Biden should be impeached for that. And yes, he deserves the shame that will forever attach to his name.
Okay, so this is how a talking point works, right? It's mob violence threatening the justices' lives to reach a partisan end. Okay, here's the thing. Protest is still legal in the United States, even though Donald Trump, as you know, was telling his Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, that when Lafayette Square was full of protesters, that he asked Esper, couldn't you just put 250,000 troops out there and shoot them? Why can't you just shoot the protesters in the Capitol? Why can't you just do that, right? So protest is still legal in this country. There is no court proceeding that's being interrupted. There's no official proceeding that's being interrupted. That was the case on January 6th. On January 6th, there was an official congressional proceeding underway to certify the Electoral College votes, right? So January 6th was mob violence to achieve a partisan end. The actual arguing of this case happened about a year ago. The decision, as you know, was voted on in February, right? Well, actually, it was voted on right after the argument in December. And then they went about their business of writing this opinion, which is a draft right now, okay, the draft opinion of Alito. And so there is no court proceeding, and therefore there's no legal objection to protesting, except in their world, you can't protest. And Florida, too. You can't protest in Florida because Ron DeSantis has made that, also mob violence. Protest is now mob violence. You understand that, right? I mean, it's just so... I'll show you mob violence. You want to see mob... Here you go.
Multiple capital injuries. Multiple capital injuries. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. 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 Can you see the difference, right? You see the difference? Here's the protesters at Kavanaugh's.
We will not go back. I see you, buddy.
Ooh, mob.
We will not go back.
They have candles.
We will not go back. We will not go back.
Ponchos.
We will not go back.
All right, so maybe I'm with you to make ponchos illegal. Well, you know, it's not so far from a candle to a tiki torch. Uh-huh.
No, Randy, you're missing it. That wild mob, that was actually MAGA disguised to incite. Do you see what they did?
Yeah. Oh my God. They're just literally anything at all for power. Anything at all. Any ripping this country apart, denigrating women, taking away rights, constitutionally protected rights. It's just not a thing. It's just not a thing. What's a thing is their power. What's a thing is winning. What's a thing is getting a majority. Well, that's a thing. That's the only thing. It's everything. And if you think that you matter to them, all right, Brian in L.A.
Hey, Randy, this is the show.
Oh my God!
I've been quiet the whole time until you got on. You took me. I'm really sorry about that. Let me go to another room.
I can't understand a word you're saying.
I'm so sorry. I'm calling about the draft opinion, and I don't think it goes far enough. I think that, I understand that life is precious and, the draft opinion and the laws in Texas are just trying to protect the lives of babies. But I don't think it goes far enough. Sorry, I'm just a little nervous.
Do tell.
Well, I think men should step up and do their part as well. They should be included in this and in their part to protect the potential lives of babies.
Vasectomy?
Well, no. If discarding an embryo is illegal and that needs to be protected by laws, shouldn't we also be protecting the seed as well?
The seed?
That contains potential life.
The ejaculate?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
There needs to be a law outlawing the killing of semen.
So I would just like to say this for the record. A sock is now a weapon of mass destruction. You understand that, right?
Well, it's also evidence because,
there
needs to be a law. Life doesn't start without it.
I actually got an email from a very damaged person who writes me probably 10, 15 times a day. I don't know what the issue is, but totally damaged person that said that it's just one of the emails over the weekend was semen is alive.
Well, okay, so see, the men need to step up and do their part.
Yes, I agree. Where are you, men? Where are you? And I also think that we ought to include, a mandatory vasectomy until and unless a person, a male person or a person with ejaculate can demonstrate to the court that they have a decent credit rating and or a job that pays at least $50,000 a year, right? Gainfully employed, and then you can have your vasectomy reversed, and not until. If we really want to stamp out unwanted pregnancy, that would be the way. Know why, everybody? Know why? Because that's reversible. Easily. Robert in California.
Oh my God! Can you hear me that well?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
I've been waiting for like an hour to talk to you.
I know.
And it's great.
So here's a little secret for everybody that waits on the phone. Okay, unless I have like 4 or 5 calls, I don't go to the phones because you run the risk of people being so terrible at their phone call effort that you go through the phone calls really quick. And so rather than bring the show to a screeching halt for, 2 people, I wait.
I told my sister like 6 months ago, why don't men get vasectomies when they're 16 years old?
Yeah.
And then if they got a life and a marriage and everything around them, they can be reversed.
Right. Exactly.
But here's something else I wanted to correspond on. Like an hour ago, you were talking about what's his name over in Russia?
Putin.
Yeah. And here's something that really pissed me off is like a mentally disturbed husband who's got a family has to kill his children and then himself. That's the way this guy is.
What are
He's
you
the
talking
same-
about, a mentally disturbed man?
Putin's mentally disturbed.
Oh, what does he? What does it have to do with a person who kills their family? I don't understand that.
No. What I'm saying is like.
See what I mean about the phone calls? You see what I mean?
He don't know about the people around him.
Okay. Jerry in Baltimore. I'm gonna regret this one too. See, that's why we put it all off, the phone thing. You know, I would rather show you information that's usable, rather than, talk about, people who kill their family. I don't even know how he got there. I really don't. All right. Well, listen, I wanted to tell you, thank you, Jessica, and, for a beautiful Mother's Day. She knows what I'm talking about. And yes, we're COVID negative, Howard and I both, and then we retested over the weekend, and we had 2 consecutive negative tests, so we made it. We conquered the COVID. See, everybody, vaccinations actually work. They work. Not so much me, but Howard.
Mary had a little man.
Lamb, lamb, lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The U.S. Senate set to take an historic vote today on protecting abortion rights, with the potential end of Roe v. Wade now top of mind.
All of us will have to answer for this vote for the rest of our time in public office.
This afternoon's vote on the Women's Health Protection Act, which locks in protections for abortion rights nationwide, expected to fail in the face of united opposition from Republicans.
Great.
Democrats in the House and the Senate are attempting to take this issue away from the people, away from the states, and force their radical abortion agenda on the American people as a whole.
What?
Democrats arguing opposing abortion rights has economic consequences, too, with the Treasury Secretary testifying Tuesday that denying women access to abortion increases their odds of living in poverty or needing public assistance.
I believe that eliminating the right of women to make decisions about when and whether to have children would have very damaging effects on the economy and would set women back decades.
Some states aren't waiting on Congress or the Supreme Court's final decision. Connecticut's governor signing a bill to expand abortion access Tuesday.
We were doing everything we can to stand up on behalf of the reproductive rights of all of our citizens.
While in Missouri, state lawmakers are proposing a law that would allow private citizens to sue abortion providers.
We need to make sure that we have constitutional provisions protecting the right to life in the state of Missouri.
Anticipating defeat on the Senate floor, Democrats vowing to take this issue to midterm voters this fall.
For everyone who says we don't have the votes in the Senate to get this done, I say, then get in the fight and give us the senators who will get it done.
There's your answer. There's your answer. Everything that we're groping for. Groping. The Herbster, the Groper, the GOP, the GROP, the Grope Party. He lost. He lost, everybody. In Nebraska, he lost. So at least the Groper, showing that even Republican primary voters in Nebraska haven't completely lost their grip on reality or decency. 8 women accused that man. 8 women accused Charles Herbster, including a sitting senator in the Nebraska Senate, of groping them. And that number is very shocking when you consider how tiny the population of women in Nebraska is. I mean, I guess if the Herbster lived in New York, he could have groped hundreds of women like, I don't know, the pressure of a name, Donald Trump. Don't you get that they're trying to pick like the worst, dumbest, most disconnected, blackmailable, secret holding, psychotic, lunatic, fringy people to be senators Don't you get that? That it's like Donald Trump runs around the country looking for people that he could blackmail, or Donald Trump runs around the country looking for dumb people or people who don't understand the world in which they will toil, government, and says, that's my guy, and I want everybody to support that person. I mean, I want to show you something. This is a little off topic, but not really. Okay, this is yesterday. We had testimony from the CIA. We had testimony from national security advisors. We had, updates on what's going on in Ukraine, et cetera, from Avril. What's Avril's last name? Haines. From Avril Haines, okay? And she reported some really, really scary stuff yesterday. I mean, this was like major information about what is in Putin's mind and whether or not Putin was interested in a long war, in a long slog, in waiting out the United States and waiting out the NATO allies and waiting out Europe, etc. Right? Because he's betting that the people in Europe, the people in the United States, it will never happen in Europe because it's happening right there in Europe. But maybe Putin's betting that his desire to own Ukraine, his desire to erase Ukrainians from Ukraine and make it like, I don't know, Russia South or something. His desires outweigh his ability, right? Because he's lost a quarter of his troops and he doesn't have artillery left. His tanks are old, blah, blah, blah. And so he may actually start thinking about tactical nuclear weapons, and then maybe even, ballistic missiles, right? That would be the bad mamma jamma. I mean, those are the ones that everybody is like, oh my God, every apocalyptic movie you've ever watched, post-apocalyptic, that's because of that. All right, and so she was giving information to the Senate in testimony. And this is what Tommy Tuberville, who, he's, a government expert. He's a senator now. He's a freaking senator. And here's how he questioned Avril Haines about our situation that we're dealing with in this world at the hands of Vladimir Putin. Okay, this was it.
So you believe that noted that when he or said that Russia weakened and that the U.S. will move heaven and earth to arm Ukraine, do you believe that's right? He should say that?
Yes, I think the Secretary of Defense should say.
Do you believe Russia blames the U.S. intelligence community for helping Ukraine shoot down a Russian plane carrying hundreds of people?
What?
I'm sorry, sir. Can you repeat the question?
Do you believe Russia blames us, our intelligence agency, for Ukraine shooting down a plane with hundreds of troops on board?
What?
Do you think Russia blames us for that?
Which plane are you thinking of?
There was a plane recently that was shot down, Russian plane, that 100 troops. Do you believe that they blame our intelligence agency for that?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. Do you believe that Russia blames our U.S. intelligence for sinking their flagship, Moskova? Do you think they blame us for that?
I don't know, sir. We haven't seen any direct report.
To what extent do you accept that Russia believes it is at war with the West and the United States? Do you think that they believe they're at war with us?
Russia has historically believed that they are in a conflict, in effect, with NATO and the United States on a variety of issues, including in cyber and so on.
So you believe that they're fighting us, that they're fighting us as well as they're fighting Ukraine?
Is that a White Claw? Was he sitting there with a White Claw? It looked like a White Claw. Just saying. Tommy Tuberville, everybody. The brilliant Tommy Tuberville talking about fictitious shooting down a fictitious aircraft with fictitious I don't know. I mean, it is embarrassing, okay? It is embarrassing. But these are the people that are being selected by, the cult of Trump. Because the cult of Trump is supporting anything the cult of Trump says they should support. And that's how you end up with guys like this. I mean, it's so sad because the issues that the United States, the issues that the world, the issues that Ukraine, the issues that women, the issues that, I was talking to Jessica last night. She's here. And God, I miss her. I'm so glad she's here. But, just somebody to talk to, just somebody. Hi, Howard. But just saying. But anyway, so I was talking to Jessica last night, and her mom was gay, and I was saying to her that this entire psycho uber right-wing cult of, I don't know what to call it, Opus Dei vein of right-wing conservative Catholicism, that it's not just about women and women's rights and our right to privacy or anything like that. I mean, you hear guys like Mike Lee, who are smarter than this, say that they're ripping this issue away from the people. This issue hasn't been something the people have grappled with for 50 years. For 50 years. I mean, they just lie and make this crap up, right? But I said to her, you understand that they're going to go after, same-sex marriage. They're going to go after gay marriage, obviously, because that was decided under the right to privacy, too. And what's going to happen to all these families? And, I mean, the two of us, burst into tears. Because what is going to happen to families with children who are married? What? What are they trying to do?
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, everybody. Please meet the new GOP nominee for governor of Nebraska.
Our values are under attack. It's really important we have the courage to stand up. I've been speaking to it. It's really important that us Christian conservatives start getting a little bit more courage and start speaking about issues that are important to us. I'm about faith, and I'm about family. I'm about pro-life. Life starts at conception. It's 100% gift of grace of God.
Oh, my God.
And there's, needless to say, there's some extraordinary things taking place. And won't it be wonderful? Won't it be wonderful together that we make Nebraska the greatest place for the unborn child to live in this country?
The unborn child to live. I was just thinking about the crap that they say. The greatest place for the unborn child to live. The unborn child is not alive. If the unborn child is alive, then the unborn child needs to get child care. Besides for me. Do you know what I'm saying? I need a break. No, this is the new GOP nominee. This is the guy that beat the groper. And it's really no better. Here, this is the groper. The groper is hysterical too. And all they ran the whole campaign on sex. The whole campaign, the whole thing.
We're going to take sex education out of the schools and put it back in the homes where it belongs.
Oh, man. Oh, that's creepy. That's creepy. Let's put sex, back in the home where it belongs. What? I don't know what he was driving at. It was just, it didn't come out right. Wasn't artfully phrased. This is the man that lost. But here, I don't want you to be confused or misguided in any way. The guy that Trump endorsed. There were two primaries yesterday. For those of you who don't pay attention to the primaries. And you don't hear much about the Democratic primaries. You know why? They're boring. They're straightforward. They're boring. You have candidates. They debate. These people don't even show up for debates anymore. Okay, they don't even want their views tested. They don't even want their views challenged. They don't. It's like a talk show without calls. Do you know what I mean? They just they don't want to hear it. They don't want to know from you. They don't want to answer any questions. They don't want to confront facts. They don't want to be asked about facts. They don't want to be asked about anything. They don't even bother to show up to debates anymore. And the GOP has said that they're no longer part of the Presidential Debate Commission. They will not show up for presidential debates in 2024 either. This is really creepy. However, this was all a culture war campaign that they waged in Nebraska, okay? And it was all about sex education, and it was about, pro-life and about who could be more Christian than the next one, which is really weird because, if you want to be like a devout worshiper of Jesus Christ or of God, or go to church. I'm not aware of anybody in this country or any law in this country that prevents anybody at all from attending sermons or mass or Sabbath or I'm not aware that there's any impingement on anybody's ability to pray or to work. I just don't even, this is all such privilege. This is such privilege, and this is all designed to create a safe space for uber right-wing, lunatic, fringy people to subjugate others. Subjugate. This is not about freedom. This is not about, when you start taking away people's right to privacy, you're advocating for a surveillance state. You're advocating for a state that does not respect other people's households, that doesn't respect bodily autonomy. And when you're talking about a society that doesn't respect somebody being secure in their own person because of your religious beliefs being imposed on them, you're no longer talking about America. You're talking about something completely else. And I don't know exactly what country. Saudi Arabia comes screaming to mind. Iran is also another possibility. Maybe China, except China isn't, they don't allow religion at all. Russia, they used to not allow religion, but now they only allow one religion, and that's Russian Orthodox. And that's it. Those are your choice. I can't say choices, because you only have the one. So I don't know what they're trying to do here. I don't know what but I will tell you that it ain't America. This is not what they're advocating for. This is not what they believe in. America has somehow, become a space where they're not being treated in the way that they hope to be treated, and that is as, replacement people. And by replacement, I mean replacement of democracy. That's why they go after voting rights, okay? I mean replacement of, your religious beliefs with theirs. I mean replacement of the law with the Bible. And so that is not America. That's why we have an establishment clause. The government, they don't respect the separation of church and state. These are people who secret money into everything from Senate races to the Supreme Court list that is handed now to a president to select from. Something really ugly is going on in this country. And so what's going to matter more than anything come 2022 are governor's races. More than the Senate even, more than the Herbster versus this Pillen dude. I mean, they're out there whipping it out. And by it, I mean religion. They're whipping it out, and they're trying to say, I'm, quien es más Christian, and I don't know what version of Christianity, because, you have Catholics for choice. Catholic women use contraception. Catholic women do family planning, just like Jewish women, just like Christian women, just like all women. So I'm not really clear, which version of what they're for, but it does seem to me that it's like some sort of Spanish Inquisition, 17th century, women can't be raped by their husbands sort of a thing, right? Where you get to beat your children again and, all this stuff. But I have to tell you, in West Virginia, so I don't want you to, think that Trump, because Trump picked the Herbster and the Pillen guy won, and he only won by 3 percentage points. It was close. So you had a groper, you had a known molester, you had a guy who was credibly accused by 7 different women, 2 of whom went public. A sitting senator in Nebraska, accused him. And he only lost by 3 percentage points. Now, in West Virginia, where there was also a primary yesterday, Trump had picked, now, so many people have fled West Virginia. There's just no way to, support your family there. And so people who want to have a family and people who want jobs and people who want a future, they're leaving in droves. And so that cost them one entire congressional district because of the census. And so they were reapportioned. And so 2 districts became 1. And these 2 congressmen, incumbents, both Republican, had to compete in a primary. And Trump picked one of them. And the one Trump picked did win, even though the other one voted for millions of dollars for West Virginia infrastructure.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I believe that eliminating the right of women to make decisions about when and whether to have children would have very damaging effects on the economy and would set women back decades. Roe v. Wade and access to reproductive health care, including abortion, helped lead to increased labor force participation. It enabled many women to finish school. That increased their earning potential. It allowed women to plan and balance their families and careers. And research also shows that it had a favorable impact on the well-being and earnings of children.
Oh, screw the children. We're not interested in the children. We're interested in the fetus, the embryo, the zygote. That's what. Oh, we love a petri dish. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously for 50 years. The option of contraception, the option of family planning, was solely the purview of a woman, her family, a doctor and a woman, a church and her, a woman and her rabbi, a woman and her priest, a woman and her pastor. Right? I mean, this had nothing to do with the government. It had nothing to do with the government because it was 50 years ago decided that a woman had a right to privacy, that a woman had a right to autonomy, that a woman had a right to decide for herself what and by whom and when she would have a family. And it increased participation in the labor force. It increased the education of women. See, you understand this is why the white nationalist, uber, crazy religious zealots are against it. And so now they're making these, all the Supreme Court is doing is sending it back to the states so the people can decide. The people can decide. This is bullcrap. Okay, the people don't need to have constitutional rights yanked away from them and have it win a popularity contest in the states. Do you understand that that is exactly what happened with, the 14th Amendment? That, they said, oh no, participation by free blacks should not be left up to the states. It is a constitutional right that all men are created equal, okay? And the same thing with Roe v. Wade. It's a constitutionally protected right to privacy. That is what it is. And they want to take away a constitutional right and put it up for, some sort of a popularity contest. This is why I'm saying to you that the midterms, it matters who your governor is. It really does. And, Pennsylvania, you look at Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, what, they got a GOP legislature and a Democratic governor who's vetoing all these bills, just one after the other, trying to keep it a sane state that respects constitutional rights. So, all of a sudden you get yourself a GOP governor in a state like that, and, women's rights just, disappear. They're not about freedom. They're not. And here's a little fact. Abortion didn't end because of Roe v. Wade. And safe abortion, overturning Roe v. Wade is not going to end abortion. It's going to end safe abortion. That's what I'm trying to say. And so when you say you're pro-life, whose life? Not the life of a what? You know what? Maternity. You know how many women used to die in child labor before the C-section, before we had a cesarean section procedure? Like half of all women would die, and they're fine with that. They're just fine with it. I'm telling you, I can't understand. What in the world they are trying to do except have an issue, and that they're willing to, violate the separation between church and state so obviously. I mean, I heard that Jim Pillen guy last night he won, and instead of thanking the people for putting faith in him, he told the people, that we're under attack. Nobody is attacking any man in this. But, you know, oh, no, conception begins, that's when life begins. Okay. Every sperm is sacred. Every sperm is great. If a sperm should fall upon the floor, it makes your God irate. Seriously, dude? Really? This is what the sperm is. Well, then the herbster should have won, because the herbster actually hires people to collect the ejaculate from the bull. That's what he sells. He sells bull semen. I know it's a disgusting thing to say, but that's how he made his money. And he's very, very wealthy, because apparently nobody wants to do that job except for the herbster. But I mean, honestly, this is crazy. So I'm waiting this afternoon. Right now, they're starting the vote in the Senate. And, this is a piece of legislation, the Women's Health Protection Act. And so the legislative filibuster applies, even though Mitch McConnell got rid of the filibuster rule for Supreme Court justices. Hence, we got Amy Coney Barrett, who has never tried a case in her life, ever. Never. Sitting on the Supreme Court as a woman of praise, which is this very far-right, extreme version of Catholicism. They actually would, assign a handmaid to a woman, honestly, like the commander's wife, in that particular, cult, in order for the woman to confess her sins to. Like, what's wrong with the confessional? What's wrong with going to the church? What's wrong with confessing to the priest? I mean, you like your religion, but you don't like it that much. What is this? I don't even understand what it is. But when you read Alito's decision and you see that he goes back to the 13th century, he goes back to the 17th century, he goes back to what? Sir Robert Hale, who believed that you could not rape your own wife. Forcing yourself on your wife is not rape. I mean, this is what he chose to write down on the page. And now we're looking at this very psychotic version of freedom, where women are somehow unfree, and that makes you all free. I don't understand it. And so now the Senate has to vote to codify or to make law the principle of privacy for women in their healthcare decisions, right? So that's a piece of legislation, and it requires 60 votes. There is no way that, any Republican, not even Susan Collins, no, she's so busy calling the police because of a chalk drawing. You want to see the chalk drawing? I don't know if you heard about this, but Susan Collins' husband, the lobbyist, got freaked out because somebody drew on the sidewalk. Here's what they drew on the sidewalk. It says, "Susie, please." I mean, it's very polite. "Susie, please. Mainers want WPA, WHPA, Women's Health Protection Act. Susie, please. Mainers want Women's Health Protection Act." He called the police. He felt threatened by that. He felt threatened. He felt that his lovely wife's life was... So she's a no. She's a no. And so is Murkowski from Alaska. They're a no. So there's no way it gets 60 votes. No way. This is crazy. This is madness. This is not America.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Justice Alito spent over 98 pages trying and failing to justify overturning the decision protecting these rights. Overturning a decision he told the United States Senate was an important precedent of the Supreme Court. His opinion isn't persuasive to me at all. It reads as snide and cruel. But that's not going to stop these justices from trying to throw us back into an age where women aren't free to make their own choices about their own bodies and their own futures. It looks like the fix went in on that a while ago, and we just weren't told about it in the hearings. So tomorrow, the majority leader will bring before this chamber legislation to protect those rights nationwide to protect that freedom across this country. And I'm eager to vote for it. We've got to stand against this assault on women's constitutional rights, and I hope some Republican colleagues will join us. And particularly, I hope, in the weeks and months ahead, that we can find ways to unravel the dark money scheme that has brought this court and our country closer to the brink. Because the court that dark money built, it's not done. It's not done trying to reshape America against our will to suit the extreme ideology of the right-wing billionaires behind the scheme. There is one good thing in all this darkness, and that is that the American people see this nonsense and have had enough.
I hope that's true. That's Sheldon Whitehouse yesterday, ahead of the vote today, which is now in progress. The vote is in progress right now. It's protecting a woman's right to an abortion, 22 yes, 23 no. 23 are literally voting to see women die because it won't end abortion. It will only end safe and sterile and, doctor administered or administered by somebody who knows what the hell they're doing abortion, right? So it's unbelievable. Even Bob Casey from Pennsylvania said he would vote for this today. And he, Bob Casey is, he's a pro-life Democrat in this weird way where, he votes not to, he voted for the Hyde Amendment that says no federal money should go to pay for, anything like that. But he also, and he backed a federal abortion ban after 20 weeks. So he's for the choice. He's for the right to privacy prior to 20 weeks. Against it after 20 weeks and is against seeing any government money, meaning Medicaid, Medicare, whatever, go to pay for. But he's a yes today. He said he would vote to completely protect a woman's right to privacy. And, Sheldon Whitehouse is right, and all of us that understand what they're doing, the slog towards Gomorrah, we all understand what they're doing. We get that this is to control people, that this is to throw our lives into chaos, that this is to, set one upon the other, to keep us divided, to throw us into chaos, to put this country on the brink of civil war. I mean, that's kind of what the big money wants. It's always the question, what does the big money want? And the answer is they want us at each other's throats. They want women to, be discriminated against. The uber ultra, right-wing Christian fringe of this country that relates to women of praise and, Opus Dei and very, very virulent forms and strains of the reading of the Word of God by leaving out some of the words, and emphasizing some of the other words. They have a very unique interest in replacing the law with the Bible. See, if you did that, then there'd be no antitrust laws. You understand? Because that's not addressed in that. And so you would have you wouldn't have any dumping laws. You would polluters like the Koch brothers would be free to pollute. The church would be able to discriminate and segregate in its own schools yet again, because there would be, no IRS. There would be no rules about, Brown versus Board, and that you have to subscribe to the federal statutes regarding segregation, regarding, discrimination, that, people have a right to privacy. They have a right to marry. They have a right to divorce. That's another one. I'm telling you, I'm the only one that's mentioning it. And only because this is being foisted upon us by uber right-wing conservative Catholics. It's kind of like the difference between American Judaism and the Lubavitcher, right? Which is real ultra Orthodox Judaism. That's sort of the kind of Catholicism that's being emphasized here, that's being deployed against us here. It isn't, a slap against the entire religion, because the entire religion doesn't play this game. And, obviously big business is all about this. They're nationalists. They're they like the religious nationalist ideology, because it means that the law gets replaced. And the Bible doesn't say anything about polluters. The Bible doesn't say anything. I mean, if you wanted to say it does, you could actually make it say that it does, in that you're stewards of the earth. You're supposed to take care of it. But, listen, women are just the first victims. Women of childbearing age, to be very specific, are just the first victims of this yanking away of constitutional rights. But women of childbearing age are not going to be the last victims of this radicalized Supreme Court ideology that says there is no right to privacy. There is no right to choose your life. There is no right to, have your own manifest destiny. There is no right for you to choose who you want to have a child with. There is no right for you to choose when you're ready to have a child. There is no rights for childbearing age women, none. And then, of course, contraception comes right behind it, because that's part of their ideology, and it always has been. That's why Hobby Lobby, that case Hobby Lobby, I tried to remind you yesterday about what was the issue. And the issue was they didn't want to provide their workers with health care because health care covered contraception. And that was a violation of their religious liberties. No, it's their religious privilege to choose what a woman may or may not put inside her body. It was their supremacy over their workers, right? That's what the Hobby Lobby, issue was. It was contraception. And of course, we're going to see, the same kind of, striking down of marriage, and who knows if it will be misogyny, which is why I brought up the Bob Jones University case. The Bob Jones University case was about segregation, white-only students, and then declaring themselves, a church or a charity that could, take a tax deduction. And the IRS said, no, you can't do that. You can't segregate and continue to take your tax deduction. This is what lit a fire under the, religious leaders in this country. And when they were asked by the IRS whether or not they were admitting black students, the answer from Jerry Falwell was, no, we're not. And so then they said, okay, we're going to take away your tax-exempt status. Now, that's a lot of money. That's big business. That's huge dollars. We're not talking about a pittance here. And so big business has looked at the fights that have been fought to keep tax dollars in the pockets of the churches, and they say, that could work for us too. We don't want to pay taxes. We don't want to do anything. And so this is really interesting, because the West Virginia primary, okay, this is why I brought it up, because, really, who cares about a district in West Virginia? Well, the only reason why it's interesting is because in West Virginia, there were two candidates vying for one combined district. Now, there was a District 1 and a District 2, and they were both Republican incumbents, but they had to run against each other because the district was condensed into one district. And so you had a candidate who voted for infrastructure dollars to go to West Virginia. Lots and lots and lots of infrastructure dollars to build roads, repair bridges, etc., get rid of polluting, coal ash, to clean up West Virginia, to do some really good stuff. He lost. The guy who was against it, who called infrastructure investment dollars going to West Virginia, called it a Biden spending spree, was endorsed by Donald Trump to deprive West Virginia of federal dollars. He won. And you have to ask yourself, how in the world do they keep getting people to vote against their own interests, to vote against their own states? Well, this is how.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn
We hesitate even to bring you these pictures because they're so awful, but it's happening and you should see what it looks like. These are protesters. This is the mob outside Justice Samuel Alito's home in Virginia. They're disgusting. As you may have heard, this is the anniversary of January 6th. And in commemoration of that, we have donned the official network-approved solemn anchor outfit, white shirt, muted tie. Message, reverence. But actually, if you take 3 steps back as historical events go, if we're being honest now, January 6th barely rates as a footnote. Really, not a lot happened that day.
Democrats are now reversing course once again, and they are supporting acts of political violence. As we speak, far-left agitators, they're trying to harass, intimidate U.S. Supreme Court justices and coerce them into saving Roe v. Wade. It is a disgusting, repulsive, despicable attempt to destroy the independence of our nation's judiciary. The vast majority in Washington, D.C. today were peaceful. The overwhelming, the 99%, as we say.
These juvenile protests, I'm sure you saw some of the video, they're a clear attempt to intimidate and harass these justices, also to impede the deliberative process at the court, something the Democrats used to warn about. The breach of the Capitol on January 6th was a terrible thing. Crimes are committed. Some people were unfairly hounded and persecuted and prosecuted, but it was not an insurrection. To say anything different is beyond dishonest, and it ignores the facts of that day.
Oh, for God's sake.
Bearing false witness over there at the Fox. You know, the Bible is not going to, smile upon that. Not allowed to bear false witness under the biblical regime that is about to be the United States of America. I hope they understand what they're wishing for. I hope they get it. I hope they do. I mean, this is so bizarre. Listen to Ted Cruz. This is unbelievable. I mean, first of all, it's Ted Cruz versus Ted Cruz. This man is such a freaking liar.
All politics for them. The ends justify the means, and it's complete hypocrisy. You see this in the corporate media. You see this among Democrats. On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting, and yet the corporate media and Democrats slander them with the made-up term insurrectionist.
As we see terrorists assaulting police officers, tragically murdering a police officer. We see a violent assault on the Capitol. We see terrorists breaking onto the floor of the Senate chamber and the floor of the House. And all of us are horrified.
We are approaching a solemn anniversary this week, and it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol. And yet, in this instance, they are not willing to call off their goons even now as this has the potential to escalate.
Thank you.
That was a silent protest. That they were saying was disgusting, that they were saying was violent, that they were saying, I mean, this is unbelievable. And now all of a sudden, January 6th was a peaceful protest. All of a sudden it was. Back then, Ted Cruz was saying it was a terrorist attack. Back then, he was saying that they murdered a police officer. Back then, he was saying that this was unconscionable. Same thing with all the Lindsey Graham actually was recorded saying back then that Biden was their best bet. That Biden would have to straighten all this crap out, that they had gone too far, that Trump was remember when Lindsey Graham got on the Senate floor and said, that's it, I'm out, I'm done, I've seen enough. What?
I tried, I'm done, I'm out, I tried.
I'm out. Yes, I tried, I'm out, I'm done. This was a bridge too far. And then all of a sudden, he started talking to Washington Post and New York Times reporters, and people, that are reporters, they actually press record when they talk to you. And he's on tape. It's pretty bad audio, but you can make out what he's saying. He says Biden is probably our best bet. He'll have to straighten all this out. Trump misjudged the mood of the country. He went too far, right? I mean,
we'll actually come out of this thing stronger. Moments like this reset. It take a while. People are calmed down. People are, I don't want to be associated with that. This is a group within a group. And what this does, there'll be a rallying effect for a while where the country says we're better than this. And Biden will help that, right? Yeah, totally. He'll be maybe the best person to have, right? bad can you get at Joe Biden? He's misjudged the passion. You know, he plays the TV game, and he went too far here. That rally didn't help. Talk about, you know, primarying us, and he created a sense of revenge.
He clearly has a sense of revenge. And you know what he's doing now? Now he's picking the worst people possible to endorse. Herschel Walker would be one. Tommy Tuberville is another one. Dr. Mehmet Oz. Dr. Oz votes in Turkey. Okay? Here's a guy, Dr. Mehmet Oz. He's a TV celebrity. Okay? He lives in New Jersey. He votes in Turkey in the Turkish election in 2018. He holds dual citizenship, and he's running for office in Pennsylvania, a state that he has nothing to do with. I mean, this is Trump. This is what Trump is doing. He's picking the worst people, the most craven, the most abusive, the dumbest, the most violent. I mean, Herschel Walker, how many guns did he hold to how many women's head? Was it one? Was it two? Seriously, this is what he's doing. It's the revenge thing. It's the revenge tour. He is literally choosing. I mean, this is why West Virginia is so illustrative. You had two Congress members, both Republican, okay? Both Republicans from West Virginia. One votes for a package of dollars, millions of dollars, to go to West Virginia. The other one doesn't. The other one says no to his own constituents' needs and, desires to repair roads and bridges. And he's the one that Trump endorses, and he's the one that wins last night. The one that says no. The one that gets people to vote against their own best interest. This is a race to the freaking bottom. Because it's all about revenge. If I can't have America, nobody can. It's just not that complicated. Laura Lynn in New Mexico.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so the 19th Amendment gives the women the right to vote. And that's really good. But how do we know that they're going to stop with this abortion law and not just go and start peeling back the amendments? And then it'll go, of course, to the House and the Senate. And how many people in the House, how many women will go, no, I don't think we really need to vote, have women vote. I mean, how do we know where this will stop?
No, we don't. We have no idea.
Exactly.
The only way that you know is to listen to people who didn't take money for a Supreme Court nominee, that weren't part of the $200 million that went to buy the court, that went to control the court, that went to capture the court. And the people that didn't partake in that scheme, in that, disgusting scheme that was, executed by people with $17 million or $16 million or $10 million or $20 million in one donation, right? The ones that didn't participate, that's who you need to listen to, because they know what the inside game was. They know what happened, and they weren't part of it.
I'm afraid that they will vote against women being able to vote. And I would not be a bit surprised.
Don't be surprised about anything. The court has been captured. There is no longer an independent arbiter of what is and what isn't constitutional. They're all hacks now. They're all politicians now. The court is not a free and fair weigher of fact or a reasonable place to consider constitutional rights. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of billionaires.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
They should haul all of these people down to the police headquarters. They should book them for violating a federal statute. What they're trying to do is change the outcome of a Supreme Court decision, and they're doing it by showing force and intimidation. And think about the disruptive nature of this. All of your viewers, think about if somebody came to your neighbor's house and started protesting and blocked the street to your neighborhood. Your children couldn't go outside. They couldn't ride a bicycle. They couldn't go play. You can't get in and out of your house without a police being there, a policeman, officer being there to assist you.
So it's very obvious to me from Marsha Blackburn's little screed there about protesting that is going to be outlawed too, that the freedom of assembly in the First Amendment, that's going to be attacked too. And you already know it if you pay attention to what's going on here in my wackadoodle state, Florida. Our governor tried to pass a law saying that all protest was mob violence and that you couldn't protest in the street, in public streets any longer, and that if a motorist was somehow delayed or detained or had to detour around you or wait a minute for you to cross the street in the middle of a protest, they then had the right to run you over. So you can see that the right to protest is total, because there's nothing violent going on in those protests. There is nothing, forceful. There's nothing violent. There's nothing. I mean, they're showing you candles burning, little white candles, little votives. They're showing you tea lights and and she's screaming. She's telling you, like, don't believe your own eyes. Don't believe that this is a silent, respectful protest in front of a justice's house that has absolutely nothing to do with any deliberations ongoing, because they've already heard the case. They heard the case in December. They decided the case in February. The decision was leaked somehow. Everybody has read it who needs to read it, who wants to read it. She's probably never read it. It is an opinion that is 98 pages long, meaning somebody worked really hard on going back to the 13th and the 17th century in order to take away a woman's right to privacy. But it's done. There is no statute that's being violated here. None. And if anything, they're attacking yet another constitutionally protected right when they sit on their TV shows there and they say things like, you can see that this is violent protest. What about the 11 abortion doctors, the 11 OBGYNs who were murdered by the pro-life crowd? What about the biological attacks? What about the harassing phone calls? What about the stalking? What about the teenage girls and the young women who needed police escorts to get into the clinic? I mean, this is like the old Goebbels propaganda, right? Which said and held that what you do is, and Putin does it too, what you do is you accuse your opponent of doing exactly what you're doing. So if Putin is saying that Ukraine is fascist and Ukraine is harboring Nazis, well, then you know that that's what Russia is doing, that Russia is going completely fascist and Russia is deploying, white nationalist soldiers into Ukraine to kill their brothers. So if they're saying, and they're sitting there saying January 6th was a peaceful protest, it was, even though there's tape of them saying that January 6th was an insurrection, January 6th was violent, January 6th, nobody wants to be associated with it because January 6th was beating police officers, crushing police officers. January 6th had everything to do with, blocking an official proceeding of Congress, which was the certification of the Electoral College and their votes. I mean, it is so completely fascist what they're doing. And why? Why do billionaires want to see fascism? Why? Why, everybody? Because this is oligarchy. We've been living in a kleptocratic society for a long time now, since Citizens United. We have been offering them a chance to purchase the government since Citizens United. And they have said, yay, let's do that. Let's take them up on it. Let's do it. Well, how we control the people? I mean, racism is good. It works for a certain amount of people. It worked, but it's not working for the evangelicals. Okay, so then let's haul out a 50-year-old decision that gives a constitutional right to women to privacy. And let's rehash that ahead of the midterms. Let's rehash that. And while they're very busy fighting about the right to privacy, we'll be purchasing the court. We'll be purchasing it, And, we have a friendly president now who can be bought. We have a friendly president now who is one of the most irreligious people that has ever come down the pike. No one will suspect him of promoting religious nationalism. He's a nationalist, all right, but he's not religious. So we can do that. Let's do that. And that's what they did. And they're doing it for profit. And let me tell you something, they don't have your best interests at heart. When you look at the lack of competition in this country, by design, okay, they don't want to see antitrust legislation. They don't want to see their good thing come to an end. They don't, we're being held up at gunpoint, basically, at the gas pumps by a handful of energy companies who run the world. They run the world. And here we are in America talking about a windfall profits tax that would apply to them here in the United States, like British Petroleum, like Royal Dutch Shell. You see what I mean? They would all be facing windfall profits tax because their profits are so astronomical right now as compared to their profits a year ago, right? And they're gouging. So the price of oil is below $100 a barrel, but the price of gas yesterday here in Florida was over $5. What is that about? That's called gouging. And how is that possible? Lack of competition. You are being lied to.
If the market were actually competitive, corporations would keep their prices as low as possible as they competed for customers. Even if some of their costs increased, they would do everything they could to avoid passing those costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices, for fear of losing business to competitors. But that's the opposite of what we're seeing. Corporations are raising prices even as they rake in record profits.
This is what they're doing, and this is why they want us distracted. They purchased the court with mega donors, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in secret. Dark money went to purchasing the court. Now, who has millions and millions of dollars? Billionaires. Do you understand? This is a ruse. This is a game. This is literally making the unwashed masses desperate. And now we can die too. Now, our lives mean nothing, right? So this is what they're protecting.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, so they just held the Women's Health Protection Act vote, which would protect women's right to privacy, something that we have had as a constitutionally protected right as females, as women, as estrogen-bearing beings in this country for 50 years. And it failed just now to pass the Senate. Now, we all understood it took 60 votes, but shouldn't we have even been able to get to 50? We should have. But Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, voted not to protect women's health, voted to take away a woman's right to privacy. You know why? Because he saw what happened in West Virginia last night. That's why. He is the guy who said, I just want an infrastructure package. I just wanted, I Build Back Better. I'm not for it. I'm not voting for it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I don't have to have it. But I'm for infrastructure for West Virginia. That's what I'll vote for. Give me that and I'll vote yes for that. We gave him that. And then Donald Trump went on the campaign trail and campaigned against the Republican who voted to give federal infrastructure dollars to West Virginia, and that guy lost. And Manchin sees that, and he's like, my politics, my Senate seat is more important than the life and safety of women of childbearing age. And he voted no. Not to protect women. To yank away a constitutionally protected right to be private in our own healthcare decisions, to be private in our own decisions about with whom to have a child and when. This is turning into some sick-ass country. It has, I mean, I was reading a story yesterday. I don't know. It's in the homework. I think it's New York Times, but it's definitely in today's homework at randyrhodes.com. Go there and click on homework. It's free. About a woman in El Salvador. Okay, this is a highly Catholic country where abortion is completely illegal. She got 30 years because she had a miscarriage and couldn't prove that she didn't abort. She had a miscarriage. It gave her 30 years in prison. 30 years in prison. Welcome to the third world, everybody. Chris in Chicago.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking the call. I just wanted to make the point, and I don't know, this is so long ago, I don't have any receipts for it, but I remember when I was a child, and this stuck with me for so long, that the cops in the New York, New Jersey area were so incredibly tired of cleaning up the corpses of all the women who had bled out trying to self-abort in the parks and the public washrooms and everything. They were thrilled that Roe v. Wade was coming in because the key word was going to be these were going to be safe abortions. They weren't.
Well, New York had safe abortion before Roe v. Wade. So did California.
Oh, okay. But I mean, it stuck with me as a kid because I thought, that's the whole thing. Is like nobody is pointing out that abortion is going to continue, but the whole point of Roe v. Wade was to make them safe.
That's right.
And I don't understand why women can't understand this.
And taking away a constitutional right from women is
my God.
Well, it's just abhorrent to begin with that five guys and a girl could sit there and decide for, the rest of 300 million people, their families, what is, doable and what is a constitutional right and just take it away. But the other thing is it's not going to end abortion. It's just going to end safe abortion. That's it.
Exactly.
That's what happens.
It's just going to kill more women. And did the cops understand all the paperwork that's coming down the road for when they start finding bodies?
Cops?
Well, I mean, when the women start self-aborting in the public places, they've always got paperwork when they find, dead bodies just laying around.
Yeah, well, I don't think they'll find dead bodies just laying around. I think you will find women with sepsis, in hospital rooms. I think you'll find them in the emergency rooms. I don't think that they'll, have to do paperwork, and if that's what you're worried about. Rich in Ohio.
Hi, Randy.
Yes.
Hi. I was just calling because I agree with you 100%. This is like, in my lifetime, I honestly never thought that I would be living this. We were living in historical times. We really are. And I think everybody should get together and reject everything that's going on. I don't accept any of it, none of it. I want to get together and do the 59th anniversary of the March on Washington, August 28th, and do it right, with have guest speakers and entertainment and, no violence, all a peace march, basically. And get everybody, fired up because you, Tom Hartman, and Nicole Sandler, you guys are all on board, and we're all on the same page.
Right.
We're tired of getting.
Well, this is the really sick part of it, that 3/4 of the United States of America, 3/4, don't want to see this happen, and yet it's going to happen, and that's minority rule. That means that, it's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules, right?
I just put that on your chat, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, I sure did.
Yeah. So.
I've been doing your chat for a while. I put birthdays and stuff like that. And I agree with you a lot of the time. And I also agree with you 100% that it's all a distraction. It's all the poisoners of the world are throwing this in front of us. Again, don't look up, I try to explain to people that they're shapeshifters. And shapeshifters doesn't mean that they actually change shapes. That they want to change your mind, your mentality into what they want to do. That's the shapeshifter. And And that's what the poisoners of the world are trying to do.
So,
They're
what's
trying to
really
distract us.
interesting, the idea that, they have people saying, the billionaires of the world who are doing all this damage to our democracy, or doing all this damage to the Senate, to the House, to the court, to the presidency. These people, they actually have Americans walking around saying stupid things like, we can't raise their taxes because they'll just pass it on to us. And they actually have people saying this as if that's true. If you had more competition, they wouldn't be able to pass it on to you, because someone else, instead of making billions of dollars, would be satisfied with millions of dollars and a larger market share by selling to you at a lower price. That is the whole point of what they're trying to avoid, competition. They don't want any of it. They like gouging you. That's why I'm trying to show you that the oil companies, okay, they're gouging. They're trying to make up for the pandemic loss, and so they're charging us $5 at the pump. In California, $7 at the pump. I mean, this is crazy, and people are blaming Joe Biden for what private oil and gas companies are doing. I never saw any. I've never seen people so gullible in my whole life.
It's greed. It's just greed.
No, it's gullibility. It's a dumbing down. It's a lowest common denominator game where they play to the lowest base instincts of a human being. They trigger that in the person. It makes them all angry and confused. And, when you're angry, you're flailing, right? And you can't think. And then you just repeat what they want you to repeat, which is, we can't raise their taxes. They'll just pass it on to us, leaving out the whole competition part of the conversation.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, here's Joe a little earlier today saying why he can't vote for the codification of Roe v. Wade in the Women's Health Protection Act. This is going to blow your mind because it's blowing my mind, okay? I am so confused with this word salad.
We're going to be voting on a piece of legislation which I will not vote for today. But I would vote for a Roe v. Wade codification if it was today. I was hopeful for that, but I found out yesterday in caucus that wasn't going to be.
You said you're pro-life. So then why do you support a codification of Roe v. Wade?
I just thought the land, that's the legislation we've had for 50 years.
It's precedented law.
When the Supreme Court justices came to us and they confirmed their belief and support of precedented law, I believed it. We found out that that's not what they're either moving towards, or we'll find out when they have their final ruling come out. But I was very disappointed.
What the F is he talking about here? Obviously, the Women's Health Protection Act was the codification. It was the first piece of legislation that would write a law that protects a woman's right to privacy, that protects a woman's right to choose with whom and when she has a family. What is he saying? Well, I was hoping for that, but that's not what it was. And so, but you're pro-life, so, obviously you don't really give a rat's. Well, I was just shocked and surprised. I was shocked and surprised because for 50 years we've had legislation in this country. We have had no legislation. This man is playing such a game. He's playing such a game. You know why? He understands who he's talking to. He's talking to Manu Raju there. He's talking to CNN. He's talking to the media. He knows the people in West Virginia aren't going to see that. He knows the people in West Virginia aren't going to hear this word salad. They're not going to hear all they're going to know is Joe Manchin voted for religious freedom. I mean, honestly, until their daughters end up, dead or, septic or somehow injured to the point where they can't live another day to have another kid. Holy crap, man. Be careful what you wish for, people. Just be careful what you wish for. Mark in Las Vegas.
Hi, Randi.
Hello.
Joe Manchin is an idiot. I mean, there's no more that you can say about him at this point.
Well, Joe Manchin is smart enough to know what his people, will hear and won't hear, and he's smart enough to see what happened last night.
Yeah, up to a point. But remember, this is the guy who's mansion houseboat, where he could look down on the people in the canoes. He wasn't listening to those constituents.
But that doesn't make him stupid, does it?
I think so, absolutely. But the reason I got on the line with you is
I think he's arrogant. I think he's a game player. I think he's arrogant. I think he's snide. I think he's cruel.
Yes.
I think he's self-serving, but I don't think he's an idiot.
Well, what he's doing is not helpful to the nation.
Well, that's
so
for
in my
sure.
Mind, that's idiocy.
Well,
yeah. So the reason I actually called though was a kind of a jujitsu move. You see, the religious fanatics on the court think that only one religion counts in this nation. All right, but there are many religions, and there are religious faiths that talk about protecting a woman's right to choose. Among those, I believe, is the Jewish faith. Now, I don't see why those religious faiths, under the Constitution exercise of freedom of religion, can't say that you cannot interfere with our
because the court has been purchased by extreme right-wing, fringy a version of Catholicism. Wait until the evangelicals figure out that this isn't the religion they thought they were getting. Wait till they find out that, it's Catholicism that they voted for. Wait till they find out that, this is not what they thought.
Right, and I agree with all of that. But what I'd like to see is other religious groups go toe-to-toe on this issue with the court and force them to face that hypocrisy.
Oh, yeah, well, that they'll just, go back to the 12th century.
And, well, they're attempting to do that right now.
Well, they went back to the 13th and the 17th is what they did. And they are literally denying the possibility of marital rape in this decision. They are literally denying that because the theory here is that because certain rights were denied in the past, they can be denied in the future. That is what they said, right? Okay, so if you look at that, then you understand that means that everything that was denied in the past will be denied in the future by this court.
That includes other religions, but force them.
It includes other religions. It includes other races. It includes not-for-profits. It includes segregation. It includes, listen, we lived under Plessy for years and years and years. So, this is the point, and they are willing to write that down, and now everybody knows where we're going. And we're going back to denying rights of people who, historically in this country, were denied rights in the past.
That's where they want to send us, but I'm saying that other groups can also step up to the plate here, and let's raise these issues in other ways, and again confront the court directly.
How do you confront this court directly? How do you do that unless you pack the court? How do you do that unless you pass some ethics rule?
Packing the court is.
Or how do you do that unless you actually hold the court accountable for the perjury that they committed?
Yeah, and we know that has to happen in other departments or other parts of the government. We'll see about that. But, there's many different ways to confront the court. One of those, again, is for a woman of a different faith who is protected by that faith for her ability to make a choice to go ahead and do that and then have it move up through the courts and have the Supreme Court confront the issue of freedom of exercise of religion when they don't like it.
And they're just going to say the same thing they said here.
No, let's see.
What do you mean? Let's see. First of all, do you understand how long that would take? Do you understand that? Okay, so that could happen. It could. What other choice?
Yeah.
The choice is to pass a law that prohibits, them from, exercising this opinion. The choice is to hold them accountable for their perjury. The choice is to pass an ethics law that says that they have to disclose who spent money on their behalf.
we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can attack this.
But you're making an argument that says that legally we could get back to the court and we could challenge the court on religious freedom.
Sure.
Yes, but
sure,
it's the same
Why
freaking
not?
Because it's the same people and they'll come down the same way.
Let's instead of declaring defeat before we
they will
try,
say,
let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. So okay, here's what you have to do.
Let's give it a go.
Okay, here's what you have to do. You have to wait until the law is actually exercised against a woman, and you have to wait for. She has to be pregnant. You have to find yourself a pregnant woman of a certain faith that actually says that it's permissible, and then she has to find a way to have an abortion in a state that prohibits it. She has to actually find a doctor who's going to play this game and is going to risk it all for this.
That's not a game to a doctor. That's not a game either.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm saying that this is one more way to push the issue. Not the only way, but it's another way.
Okay, the way to actually do this is to codify Roe v. Wade. The way to do this is to do this before it's done.
I agree with you, but how long has that taken, if not any more or
It took
less
them
time
50
than
years to take it away from us. Do you really think that we should just go quietly into that good night?
Years, but what I'm saying is that the issue of codifying it in law has been repeatedly brought up by the Congress over the course of those 50 years.
No, it hasn't, because we haven't had 60 votes in the Senate, except for about 3 seconds under Obama. They wouldn't seat Al Franken, right? Remember that? Because, there was...
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so we
I'm not
haven't
saying it
had a
was
60-vote majority. We haven't had a 60-vote majority since 1979.
I agree,
so we haven't had all this
I'm-
opportunity to codify it. That's just not right. That's not true.
I didn't say it was successful, but it has been
We
brought
haven't
up,
even
and
tried
it
it because we don't have 60 votes and you have a legislative
Well,
filibuster.
guess what, Randy? We haven't tried to confront the issue of freedom of religion either. Does that mean we shouldn't try?
They have tried to confront freedom of religion. Here's the court that they built. This is the court that they captured. Now they have...
Now on our side, we need to do the opposite.
No, we need to actually put more justices on the court.